Welcome to Run, Thrive, Survive with me, your host, Sierra Carter, the #1 podcast for your healthy habits for nutrition and exercise, race reviews from special guests, and everyday motivation. And of course, you guys, surviving life together. Are you guys ready? Let's go. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Run, Thrive, Survive with me, your host, Sierra Carter. And as always, it's another beautiful day to be out here running our lives instead of letting life run us. Now, today's episode, I'm super excited to get to because we've got a special guest talking about a race that we actually can't run right now because it's not a thing anymore, I guess you could say. It's in the vault of the vacation races. So I'm super excited to hear from her. But first, I just want to give a huge shout out to all my listeners for listening over the past few weeks and sharing it with your friends because downloads have gone up. It's a newer podcast, so I'm extremely grateful. So be a friend and give it to one of your friends, share it with one of your friends so it can keep growing and I can keep bringing you guys awesome new content because there's a lot coming out about nutrition, a lot coming out about training techniques, tips, and just overall mental and physical health and wellness because that is what the Run, Thrive, Survive is all about. We got to run together, thrive and grow, and survive our bad days together. But enough of that. I want to get to our very special guest today, Kim, and she is also a vacation runner, so she loves running all the vacation races, and she did one a little while ago called the Shenandoah Vacation Half Marathon up in Virginia. Now, when she had told me that she did this race, I'd actually never heard of this race before, so I was very interested in talking to her about this, and I think you're going to be just as interested in it. Just looking at her pictures, it's a pretty incredible place. So if you are just listening to this on my podcast, also check out the YouTube because you're going to be able to see her videos, her pictures, and everything that you need to know where to stay, where to go if you want to visit this place. You might not be able to run it, but you can always go by yourself and run it for yourself. So without further ado, I want to hand the mic over to Kim to go ahead and introduce herself because I want to know who she is and why she started running in the first place. So Kim, thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
Thank you. I actually discovered vacation races in 2016. I did my first half marathon as the Great Smoky Mountains Half Marathon that year. But I started running in 2015, and that was my first half. That actually started the journey for my 50-state half marathon challenge. Driving home from Tennessee that weekend, because I drove from Illinois there, and I didn't want to do my first half in Illinois. But driving home that weekend, I thought this was an amazing experience, and I didn't want it to end. And so I just started the 50-state journey, and I think I've done 10 states now since 2016.
That's awesome.
And then the next year in 2017 is when they introduced the Shenandoah Half Marathon. And like you mentioned, they don't do that anymore. I have my theories as to why, what happened in 2017 to, I don't know if I want to say deter people, but just slow people from signing up for it. So we can talk about that more a little bit once we get to that. So yeah, and then I've started running with my dog. She doesn't do half marathons, but I've enjoyed doing that with her too.
What brought you into running? Like, were you a runner most of your life, or did you just pick it up one day because you decided, hey, I want to run, and then you signed up for a marathon? Because I always like to say,
pretty much,
running is like a drug where you do a 5K, then you do a 10K, and then you're like, I'll do a half, and then it kind of keeps building from there. How did you get into it?
So I moved into my condo in 2015, and I was in a nicer neighborhood, more sidewalks, more access to that kind of stuff, and I just started going for walks in the summertime. And that one day led to what would it be like to run? And
absolutely
ran a quarter mile, and then you keep running and you get to a mile. And like you said, it's an addiction. As you keep making these accomplishments and feeling better mentally and physically, you keep going for it. So I actually think I signed up because I signed up for the Great Smoky Mountains in April of 2016. And that was a couple of weeks before I did my first official 5K. So
Okay,
I
so
hadn't even done my first official 5K when I signed up for a half
yeah, I was
marathon.
just about to say you didn't even do a 5K yet. You didn't even know what the race scene was like before you before you signed up for a half.
Right. And I mean, I did do a few local 5Ks
That's awesome.
that spring. And then I did a 4 miler a couple weeks before I went to Tennessee in 2016. But vacation races definitely set the bar very high for half marathons and
Absolutely.
how it is and the expos, the environment, the people. It set the bar very high.
How many vacation races have you done?
Not as many as you would think. So I've done Smoky Mountains twice, Shenandoah, and then Mount Rushmore.
When did you do Mount Rushmore? What year?
The first year, 2018.
And might be the last year they have it until
I
it goes back
know.
into the vaults. Oh, that's so sad. I've always wanted to run that one. It's
Yeah,
such bad
that one's
timing this year.
probably my favorite course.
Even better than Shenandoah.
Yeah, yeah, I hate to say that, but definitely. I think a lot of it is because I'm already east of the Mississippi River, so stuff
Right.
in Shenandoah, I'm kind of, I mean, it's hillier than Illinois, but I was used to that kind of
Right.
scenery, all the greenery. Just there's something different about South Dakota and everything out west that you don't get here.
It's very true. It's the Black Hills. It's just a beautiful scenery. It's a really gorgeous place out there. But since we're talking about Shenandoah, I want to focus on more the training. So, of course, when you signed up, you probably were newer to the training. I want to hear your experience before you talk about the race. How did you train for Shenandoah when you signed up for it? What were you getting ready for?
I kind of treated it similar to Tennessee, knowing it was going to be hilly.
Right?
But honestly, in 2017, that was the year I ran my most half marathons. So one, two, three. I think I ran 5 or 6 that year.
Jeez.
So my endurance, yeah. So I had like one in March, one in April, one in July, then Shenandoah, then Tennessee, and then one in November. So I was already constantly having that mileage up. I was already training from my July race
Right.
that went right into this, but mostly it's the hills that you want to train for out there.
Right. So just looking at the course, and for all the listeners, I want you to imagine if you look at the course map, and if you're on YouTube, you can see the course map right now. It went something like it goes a little bit here, and then it has this, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this large increase of hills at the very end. And it looks like it started at like mile 7 or 8, where it just became very hilly. And it looked like some of these hills became almost climbing up mountains for the East Coast. Because I know the East Coast, if you've been out here, especially if you've done the Rocky Mountain one, they're not mountains per se, but when you're running, everything feels like a mountain. So if you're looking at the map, it seems pretty reasonable, and then all of a sudden the hills hit you at the very end. When you were running through the race, how did that feel at the very end? Like, what were your thoughts going through this race?
So, I'll admit that the weather that year was not nice. It was cloudy, it was cold, it was rainy. It downpoured on us right before the start of the race. So a
That's
lot of us
awful.
had the rain jackets. We were trying to stay warm and trying to stay dry at that point. And the rain tapered off. I mean, after the start, I think the rain tapered off and it was just misting here and there. I ended up taking my jacket off, I think around mile 8 or mile 9. But for that race, I think the humidity and the rain I thought about more than the hills itself.
Oh no.
And honestly, I mean, it's been a few years now, so I was trying to remember. I just remember all the rolling hills out there, and then the rain and the wetness. Um, but yeah, I would say there were some hills towards the end that got a little steeper, but it wasn't like I don't feel like it was like climbing a mountain. I've definitely done worse hills, I think, than those. It was just this like kind of gradual rolling uphill, if that makes any sense. I know rolling hills is the thing that old runners are like, yeah, right, but there's no
Right.
better way to explain that.
Right. Well, how would you compare it compared to like the Smoky Mountain or the Mount Rushmore race? How would you compare these hills compared to those? Because I know the Smoky Mountain and Mount Rushmore, people have run them and they can compare to them. In their head, what does Shenandoah, what would that have entailed for their races? Maybe it would have been a
I
faster
think,
race if it's not as hilly, not as mountainy.
yeah, because I think that was one of my slower times at Shenandoah, but part of that was because I was taking pictures. I was just enjoying it. All of my vacation races, I don't go out to win them. I go
Absolutely.
out to enjoy them. But yeah, that was one of my slower ones, but so was Mount Rushmore because again, I took all those pictures. Um, I would probably compare Virginia closer to the Smokies because it's still in that Appalachian range at least.
Right.
To compare to Mount Rushmore, I think Mount Rushmore was more steep because it was a very long 7 mile uphill.
Oh, that's what everybody says
um,
about that race. Oof.
yeah, we started in Keystone that year, and I looked at my watch when we got to the top of the mountain, and it was 7.45 miles all uphill,
Oh
I
my
think is
God.
what it was. But you don't have that in Virginia and Tennessee. You're going up, you're coming down. You're going up, you're coming down. It's not
Right.
a constant uphill like I think some of the ones out west might be.
Right. Yeah, so that's what I've been hearing. And I'm not sure you could I want you to tell your theories on why you think it may be in the vault and not something that they do regularly, but it sounds like when we're out west, because a majority of the races are out west when you're with the vacation races. I think one now without Shenandoah is over here on the East Coast, and that is the Smoky Mountains. But the rest of them are in like the Rockies, Glacier, Mount Rushmore is kind of in the middle. But Yosemite, all of those other ones, they're all out west. Now, your theories, and we talked about this prior to doing the podcast, with your experience with the rain, what are your theories of why they're not doing it with the vault, or why they're not doing it and it's in the vault now?
Like I mentioned, I think a lot of it was the weather. That was the year that I did we decide it was Harvey that came up, the hurricane that came up through the Gulf, and
I
it
think it was Harvey.
came across the Midwest even, and then it dissipated through Virginia and out into the Atlantic. So, I mean, that was a pretty major hurricane in which it just kept going across. And like I said, it was cloudy, it was rainy, it wasn't a pretty weekend.
Right.
And I think that if you're not from that area, like if you were from the West and you were coming out to that area, you probably thought that was the norm and what it was going to be. That's just it's unpredictable. I mean, I went
Right.
to Tennessee the following weekend and did the Smoky Mountains that weekend, and it was gorgeous and as beautiful as can be. And I think that, and yeah, so Sunday, the race was Saturday. That next day on Sunday, it was gorgeous. My parents and I went up to Washington, D.C., and it was just the perfect day to be outside. So I think that's just a lot of it. People expect it to rain, and that's why they don't want to do it.
Right. Now, looking back on this race, so looking back, I know it was rainy, and I know you didn't um really see the hills. How would you tell somebody to train if they've never run a half marathon before? They're not conditioned. They're not ready for anything. How would you tell them to train for something like this?
If you have access to humidity, I know out west that's
Right.
really hard.
Right.
But if you're in the Midwest, don't be scared to run in humidity because that's really going to help you. Um, and of course, for any half marathon, I would say train for the climate in which that half marathon is at. But um, just hill repeats, I think, is a good thing. Again, it's not a steep hill that you're climbing for several miles. Just
Right.
doing the hill repeats. Find one hill and keep going up and down it, and that's going to simulate. similar to what you're doing there.
What was the trail like? Was it pavement? Was it dirt?
It was a road.
Okay.
Um, so it kind of went back and forth between like country roads that, if you're from the Midwest, country roads with no lines on them.
Right.
And then there were some roads there that did have the lines, and one lane was at least blocked off for us.
Oh, how nice. Now, did you like the course personally? Would you rerun it if they ever had it again?
Yeah, it was very serene. I mean, I'm trying to remember a specific landmark or something that you passed, but I mean, you were out in the country the whole time. I remember
So
horse
beautiful.
fields, or not horse fields, but horse farms, and just the greenery and the mountains and the clouds all around you. So it's very serene.
Absolutely. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit because I actually haven't talked a lot about the expos in the vacation races with anybody. You said that the vacation races upped the expo experience.
Mhm.
How so? When you went to their expos, how were they?
So to back up, my first year in 2016, I did the Smoky Mountains, and a couple
Right.
weeks before you get there, they send out an email that they need volunteers. Well, I went to Tennessee that first year by myself. So I was like, I've got free time to volunteer. And I think that was a lot of fun to just be able to be part of this community and meet new people. And you're spending however much time you want. You can do I think 4-hour shifts or something. And um, that's,
That's
I,
not
I
bad.
built a lot of friendships just helping volunteer at the expo experience. They bring in other vendors that you
How
can
cool.
purchase product from. Their merchandise, like I bought extra shirts because their merchandise artwork on their shirts and such, it's different and it's unique, and it's something you want to take home and wear every day if you could.
Right. You get so proud of your race shirts. And you tell
Yeah,
people, I ran this race. Do you see my shirt? And, of course, people are like, okay, please, after your 100th t shirt. But it's so exciting. That's the whole point. You earn something, especially with your medal.
right, right. And I mean, I'm still working from home with COVID, but when I was in the office, I used to call it Race Shirt Friday because I've
I love it.
accumulated so many race shirts. I was like, I'm going to wear a different one every Friday, and of course they rotate, but still, I made it a thing of wearing race shirts on Fridays.
Oh, that's absolutely awesome. Now, coming up after the break, I want to talk to you more about when you went up there. And this is something more that people would be able to do now. So maybe if you're listening to this after the break, we're going to be talking about what she did while she was up there. You can go up there still and go run around this area. And well, it's private land, but go run around Shenandoah. And you can also go on some wonderful hikes and places up there. So, right after the break, I want to get with Kim and talk about that. But first, let's hear from our sponsors.
Join us for the fresh, new For Your Best Self podcast with Doctors Anita Saluja and Rebecca Novo of Dermatology plus Plastic Surgery. We will reveal the facts about techniques, trends, products, and procedures to be your best self. The first and only podcast combining the synergy of aesthetic dermatology plus plastic surgery. Search For Your Best Self on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify.
All right, guys, we are back from break and we're still here with Kim, and we're going to get into what she did while she was up in Shenandoah, because if you're like me, when you heard Shenandoah, you probably went, I don't know where that is. I thought it was somewhere west. To be honest with you, I thought it was somewhere up in like Oregon or Washington. I'm not super keen on the East Coast. I am from the West Coast myself. So anything east of the Mississippi, it's kind of over my head unless it's the Smoky Mountains. So I'm super excited to talk to Kim about what she did while she was up there. And most importantly, first, how did you get there from Illinois? Did you fly in somewhere? And then from there, what did you do? Did you walk? Did you run? I know we're runners. Maybe we could run across like Forrest Gump, something like that.
I drove. It was one of the longest drives I've ever
Oh
done. I think it
no.
was 14 hours.
Wow. From
And
Illinois?
and from Illinois, yeah.
Wow, that's a long drive.
Ohio,
To
Pennsylvania.
give you an example, it only takes me 8 hours to get to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And it's because it's flatter land, believe it or not, Kentucky's
Wow.
rolling hills as well. But
Right.
West Virginia was very hilly and a lot to maneuver around and such.
Oh.
I think it
It
may have
makes
been 12
sense.
hours, but the other kicker to it was my parents wanted to go last minute,
Oh,
but I was
Oh.
planning to be gone for 10 days because I was doing the Smoky Mountains the next weekend.
Right.
Well, they couldn't be gone that long, so they ended up just driving behind me the whole way out there. So I'm like paying attention to my parents, paying attention to the road. It
that's
was
a
Labor
Oh.
Day
that's a
weekend.
long
So
time.
it's just,
Oh,
it was an experience. I would do it again.
Right. And you can't speed because mom would be upset. Like, no matter what age you are, mom will be upset if you speed. Right? I know my parents would be screaming in the front seat, slow down, if I go like 52 in a 50-mile per hour
Uh,
area.
my dad was driving the car behind me, and I'm my father's daughter, and we were we were both speeding. I mean,
Perfect.
I
Good.
learned it from him.
At least it's a family thing. Right?
Yeah.
Now, once you got there, where did you end up staying?
Uh, so it was a super, super small town off the interstate called New Market. Because I
Okay.
traveled so much in 2017, I look for cheaper hotels.
Right.
And plus out there with it being such a rural area, it is hard to find hotels. So this was about a half hour away from the race site.
That's not bad at all. That's nice.
Mm-mm.
That's pretty close compared to some of these races that you have to stay pretty far from. So half
Yeah.
an hour. Now, was it an Airbnb or was it a B&B? Where did you find it?
So I think that was before I knew about Airbnbs. So it was just
Oh,
a hotel that I found
okay.
online somewhere.
Oh, hey, whatever
Yeah.
works. Now, being out there and racing and everything, what did you get to do while you were out there? What is there to do in the Shenandoah Forest? Is it forest? Is it park? It's a park,
National
right?
Park.
National park. What is there to do out there other than hike
Um,
or some good hikes?
yeah, so the vacation races, they did give us some suggested hikes that had been suggested from them from locals. Park maps, you can usually,
Right.
I was Googling what a good hike would be. But again, with the weather on Saturday, I didn't have a lot of time Friday, so with the weather on Saturday, it was hard to go hiking, but my parents and I did drive down like Skyline Drive just to see. And
Oh,
Skyline Drive is a road that runs from north to south through the entire park. And then there's parking lots off to the side for trailheads.
ooh,
Um,
pretty.
so we just drove it to see if we would catch any views through the fog or anything. And we ended up seeing a bear crossing the road.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, he was a roly-poly and a big guy, but I mean, yeah, so we saw him. And but then Sunday when the weather so Sunday we actually went up to Washington D.C.
Oh,
Um, that's only about an hour away.
that's not bad at all.
No, and like I said, the Sunday the weather was gorgeous. And so we just walked around DC and did some touristy bus things. And I would recommend that too, absolutely. If you're going to that area, you're only an hour from DC, and I
Right.
really enjoyed visiting there.
DC is
I wish I
such a
had more
beautiful
time.
city. Right. There's so much to do in DC. If there was a city I could move to, and I mean, granted, maybe not now with everything like all the COVID restriction and well, COVID going on, but if there's a place I could move to, it would be DC. I love DC. I think it's a beautiful place, very historical, and it's always something going on. I'm a small town
Yeah.
person, so it's kind of cool and neat to watch something always go on. Now, going from DC hiking, driving around, where did you stay in Virginia until you had to do the Smoky Mountain race? What did you do between hand? Because there's a lot of people that do back-to-back races, and it gives you a lot of
Yeah.
time to go explore the area. What did you do?
So Sunday we went to DC. Monday, that was Labor Day, and that was my
Absolutely.
plan to drive to Tennessee that day. Part of me wishes I had spent an extra day in Virginia, but I didn't. But on my way down to Tennessee, I went back through the park because the weather was nicer, and I did a little 1 mile hike.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I sent you some pictures from
yes.
Black Rock Summit, I think is what it was called. Um, and that was super, super cool because I mean, it was a fairly easy 1 mile hike, but the views were pretty extraordinary from where you were. Um, and then from there, I just continued on to Tennessee. I stopped at a winery in Virginia along my way and
Oh,
settled into Tennessee, and then did a few hikes, I think. So Tuesday, I think it rained in Tennessee, so I took it easy. But then, like Wednesday, Thursday, I did a couple of other hikes.
right.
Friday, I was volunteering at the race expo, and then Saturday, I ran, and then did another hike right after the run.
Now, volunteering at the Race Expo, real quick, I guess, for people that are looking to volunteer, is it, do you get like a percentage off signing up for races, or is it just strictly volunteering?
So yes, usually you get a discount for your next race that you
That's
sign
awesome.
up for. I don't know if or how they still do that. I don't want to say what this percentage is now in
Right.
case they've changed anything, but um, yeah, you usually get a discount for your next race when you volunteer for at least 1 4-hour shift.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. Well, that's a pretty good deal right there. It's fly in,
Yeah,
4 hour shift, and then you can sign up for another race next time. Yeah, I love that.
exactly.
That's the best thing you can do. Now, just reviewing both back to back Smoky and Shenandoah, how would you tell somebody to dress and what to pack and what to bring for these races? Shoes wise, coats wise, pants, sports bras, whatever it is. I know they're probably drastically different, but how would you tell somebody to pack?
For the run or for the hikes or both?
I would say mainly for the run, but of course, like for the hikes, probably extra jackets, maybe less.
Yeah. So I mean, typically, so for Tennessee, I'll use it as an example. I'm usually wearing shorts and a tank top, and I might have a long sleeve shirt at the very beginning because, I mean, you are getting to the race start line before
Pretty
dawn,
early, yeah.
so it's pretty chilly. And then at mile 3, they have your toss away, and then they donate the
So
clothes.
nice.
Um, so for Virginia, for example, I didn't plan for the rain. I had my rain jacket, but I wore shorts and all I had was a tank top with me. So I ended up wearing my race t-shirt, the Shenandoah t-shirt, so I had at least something a little warmer than a
I hear that's bad
tank
luck.
top.
To
Is
wear your race,
it?
yeah, to wear your race shirt before you finish, I hear it's bad luck.
I've never heard that one, and I've never done it. I've never worn my race shirt for the race. It's like, well, this is
Funny.
what I've got,
Right.
and it's going to be warmer. So I had that and my rain jacket for that, and I kind of wish I had a pair of capris or pants that year,
Man.
but you work with what you've got. So
Hopefully you move fast enough so you aren't cold the entire time.
yeah, it does make you want to move a little faster.
It does. Your times are really good when it comes to the cold weather. And it's not because it's cold weather, it's because you need to warm up.
Yeah.
Now, kind of wrapping it up, big one word of advice to runners who want to start running, who want to, who were you before you signed up for that 5K and half marathon? What is one word of advice to any runner that you would give them that you think would have helped you in your shoes or when you were in their shoes? In
Like
your
as a
shoes.
beginner runner,
Yes, as a beginner runner or somebody who's
as a big,
contemplating running.
just take the first step out the door.
I love it.
I mean, like I said, I was in the middle of a walk when I was like, hey, I wonder if I can run to that street down there and just see what it feels like. It wasn't a plan for me at the time, and I somehow got addicted to it very quick because I think like many runners at that time in my life, I was going through a lot of life changes,
Absolutely.
a lot of stress, I guess you can say. And that was my mental breakaway. I started to feel the endorphins and the hormones from running, and it helped me in everyday life. So that's something else to consider too. If, I'll talk about mental health for a second. If you're at home and you don't know how to get up off the couch, it's hard as heck, but go do it, because getting outside in the sunshine and running and moving helps tremendously.
There's really no better feeling than just running freely for a second, mentally, physically, anything. And it has helped people wonders. And I mean, you and both I have experienced when you seem like you're in a rut, when you seem like you're kind of lost, running seriously does help. It sounds silly, but that's why so many people do it. You don't understand until you need it. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. That's an awesome point that you brought up.
And one more other takeaway is, the people who, I'm a run walker. Sometimes I can run an entire 3 miles without stopping. Sometimes I can't. And there is no shame or anything in being a interval or a run walker.
Absolutely
I still do it, and I still call myself a runner.
Absolutely not. And you know what? Those people still pass you. Like, no matter how fast you run, there's somebody that's going to be run walking it that's going to pass you. And you're not going to understand, because you're going to play leapfrog. You're going to be like, well, I'm going to keep running. And then they stop and walk. And then they sprint past you, and then they stop and walk. And you guys finish at the same time. There is no shame. There is no shame in that. I remember being so irritated. How can they walk and run, and I'm staying here struggling and running, and they're still passing me? No shame in that. I love that. I think it's a really good tactic for people who mentally feel like they cannot run for long periods of time. You can, but if this is something you're more comfortable with, I think it's a good idea. Awesome point. Well, thank you, Kim, so much for coming on today's podcast. If people want to run these races with you, where can they find you? On Instagram, Facebook?
Instagram, I guess, is probably where I post most of my running related stuff.
I do too. I love Instagram.
I believe it's Kim JW86.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim. So we will be in touch. I can't wait to see what your next race is and where you go from here. And for all the listeners out there, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please hit that subscribe button and share with some of your friends, especially somebody that you want to tag them and go on one of these vacation races with, because they are seriously awesome destination things to do with your friends, in a group of friends, with your significant other, or with your best friend who's crazy enough to do this with you. So you guys share with your friends, and head over to Facebook, Run, Thrive, Survive. Find me on Facebook, and at The Runpreneur on Instagram and TikTok. You will never miss any more content if you go follow and like those pages. So you guys, thank you again so much for listening to tonight's podcast. And wherever you are, whatever you do, make sure you are out there to run your life instead of letting life run you. Bye, guys.